It's been a long time. I hope you're all doing well. For myself, I think this summer is going to be decent. Now, I promised I would upload every month, and I haven't broken that promise. After all, I never said they'd be in the same year. Finally, we're at Lesson 2. This lesson is based on the second chapter of the textbook published by New Express, which in previous lessons I called the New Horizons textbook. Turns out that New Horizons is not so much a textbook as Animal Crossing, the game we were all playing in 2020. That's my mistake. I will try not to make it again, but really I'm probably going to make it again. At any rate, in this lesson, I will introduce basic compound sentences and the most basic of complex sentences. But first, I've got a few things to go over. So first off, it's been about 2 years since I promised I would upload a video every month, and obviously that never happened. And I'm sure you can understand that 2020 was a bit of a rough year, 2021 also a bit of a rough year. Now, 2022, still kind of a rough year. I mean, have you seen what's going on? Yeah, so it was a bad time for me to commit to that. And I'm frankly not really sure when is a good time for me to commit to that, since I also have a full-time job that I walk to, and that's a lot of time and energy spent every day that doesn't leave a lot in reserve for a project like this. But I do know I've studied far ahead of what I'm going to teach you today, and just knowing what I know now, I can make several more videos, and I plan to. I'm just not making commitments about when. Keep your eyes open. Next, I want to thank the 250-ish people who subscribed to my channel since I uploaded my last lesson. It's been so long that you might not even remember subscribing to me, but thank you. I noticed, and it meant a lot. Also, a hearty 谢谢 to Xiao's channel for shouting me out in one of his videos about the Ainu language. I thought that was really cool, and I've enjoyed your videos. I never replied because I always felt like replying meant I had to hurry and make the next video, but I'm replying now. Thank you. So next up, I want to quickly review what we discussed from Lesson 1, which I recommend going back to since some time has passed. So we discussed simple copular sentences, like sentences of the type A is B, and the word for is ne, and it goes after the two AB that it's linking. So for example, this is fukusakina would be tampe this, fukusakina ne. So next up, simple questions, which you can ask just by adding ya to the end of a statement. So is this fukusakina? Tampe fukusakina ne ya? And finally, we went over simple imperatives and prohibitives, which is to say simple commands and negative commands. Now, you can give a simple command just by using the bare verb. So, for example, if you want to tell someone to eat their meal, you would say ipe, which is the word for eat. If you want to tell someone not to do something, you need to put the word iteki in front of the verb. So, for example, to tell someone, don't touch it, you would say iteki kere, which is don't touch. And that's it. Very simple rules. And finally, I've been working hard for you behind the scenes, and I made a flashcard deck as a companion to the textbook. It includes all of the vocabulary from all the dialogues in the book. That's about 440 words, and includes audio for each one. So if you study the flashcards, and you study my lessons 1 and 2, you'll be able to 100% understand the dialogues in chapters 1 and 2, even if you can't read the Japanese translations in the book. I do, by the way, have English translations on my website, links in the description. My goal for the first 20 videos in this series is to make the content of the New Express book completely accessible to people who don't know Japanese. So that means that I can translate the grammar points, I can translate the cultural points, and I can translate the dialogues all to English. What I can't do is give you the Ainu dialogues in their entirety. For that, you'll need to buy the book, which I recommend you do. With that, let's get started. The first topic to discuss is the conjunctive particle wa, which in this lesson basically means and. It has some other meanings that we won't discuss in this lesson. But it can link verbs or clauses, but it cannot link nouns. So for example, you can say, I went to the store, wa bought milk. But you can't use it in the phrase like peanut butter and jelly. That's a different kind of and. Okay? So clauses, not things. Let's look at one common example in Ainu.
Come
in and rest. Okay, side note. There are two grammar points in this that we have not discussed yet. First off, many verbs in Ainu, I think especially those that involve motion, have distinct singular and plural forms. For example, has a plural subject, which means that you're inviting multiple people, 2 or more, into your home. On the other hand, can be used for either singular or plural subjects. It does not have distinct forms. Secondly, a polite imperative, or, in this case, a plural imperative, should end with
yang.
Of course, as discussed in Lesson 1, a casual imperative to a single person is just the bare verb, no yan necessary. The subject before and after wa can be the same as in
The
owl flew away. But they don't have to be the same. So for example, you can also say
確くる。君へは甘めちかっぽしあまんめ。
Crows eat corn and sparrows eat rice. Now I should mention that you cannot just simply imply the verb in both clauses. You need to actually say the verb both times. So you can't wax poetic like you might in English and say, crows eat corn and sparrows rice. You need to actually say, eat corn and eat rice. This is in contrast to the first example on this slide, isosanke komue hopuni wa areba, in which we see that the subject is implied in the second clause. You can drop the subject when it's clear, but you cannot drop the verb. And now to deliver on the complex sentence portion of the lesson, specifically very simple adjectival clauses. Ainu does not distinguish between adjectives and verbs, so if you see the phrase kotopi hure, that can mean my hair is white, or it can also mean my hair is becoming white. In either case, this is a complete subject-verb sentence, where the subject is my hair, and the verb is white. Just like adjectives in English, intransitive verbs, or adjectives, whichever you like to call them, in Ainu, can be placed in front of the noun that governs them. For example, white hair would be hureyoto, and the person who cried, or the person crying, would be chiskuru. Now once again I want to pause and discuss a couple of points from the previous slide. First, you saw 2 different forms of the word otop in that slide, meaning hair. So the first was kotopi, meaning my hair, and the second was otop, which is just the word for hair itself. Now in Ainu, there are special forms of certain words that denote possession, or rather that the word is possessed by something else. And in the Sado dialects, this is just a few words, especially body parts. But in some dialects, which I believe are now extinct now, but I'm not sure, this was every word. Every noun had this special possessive form. But we are studying the Sado dialect, and we will discuss this further in Lesson 5. Next, I want to make a point about accents. So I mentioned in Lesson 0 that there are special rules for determining the accent of most words. And I do want to emphasize now that that is most words and not all words. There are exceptions, like this word, hure, which according to normal accentuation rules would be hure, but it is hure. And there's really no way to know most of these words except to be exposed to them. Okay, next up, we are going to talk a little bit about the word
rue,
which is a very common word and very difficult to explain in English. So I'll give you the most basic explanation I can for now. And for the linguists among you, It seems to be called an inferential evidential by the linguists I've read. So the first usage I want to go into is just due, which is used to ask a question. Specifically, you're going to be asking about something that you just heard or saw or something like that. Thus the inferential evidential. And you're kind of asking for an explanation or validation, something like that. If you know Japanese, it's like asking a question with no. So for example, in the sentence,
도한테 감이 내루에
she is not so much asking, is that a kamui? She's asking, that's a kamui? As if she's asking for elaboration on what she had just heard from someone else. I have a lot to say about kamui at the end of this lesson. Stick around, it's the best part. Next up, how do you answer the question? Well, if the answer is yes, you just say,
류에은
and if it is no, just as discussed in lesson 1, you just say, somo ne. The last usage I want to discuss in this lesson is,
류에네
which is just an affirmative sentence ending. It doesn't really translate to English, except perhaps in tone or expression. Maybe you can say what you're saying with a knowing nod, or something like that. In any case, here's an example sentence using both of these constructions.
류에은 빠세 감이 내루에네.
Yes, it is an important kamui. So, incidentally, this word pase literally means heavy. But in this case, it can be translated perhaps better as greater, because kamui are divided into pase kamui and kosne kamui, which is greater and lesser kamui, which is not related to their weight. But what is kamui? Kamui are a very significant part of traditional Ainu culture. In fact, I would say that you can't understand Ainu culture at all without understanding something about kamui. The word itself is probably related to the Japanese kami, but we don't know which language borrowed from the other. Whichever it was, it happened a very long time ago. The simplest explanation is that in Ainu tradition, everything except for humans are animated by kamui. A living soul is come to Ainu Moshiri, the human world, from Kamui Moshiri, the Kamui world. And I'm not just talking about animals. I'm talking about everything. Rivers, plants, the dust that gets into your eye. It's all kamui. Everything serves a purpose. I saw an interview with a man named Debo Akibe, an Ainu man from Hokkaido. And he was saying that, for example, in childhood, if he spilled a drink on the floor, he wouldn't get mad and say, oh, I wasted that drink, I soiled the floor, or whatever like that. He'd say, oh, the kamui in the floor was thirsty. So it really changes the way that you look at everything. And just like that spilled drink had a purpose, all kamui have a purpose. And for many of them, like fish and deer and herbs, their purpose is to come down from kamui moshiri and provide food for the humans as a sort of a gift given willingly. Because all animals are kamui, any animal can have kamui added to its species name. For example, a snake is called kinasu, but you can also call it kinasu kamui. That said, certain kamui that are primarily used as food, such as deer and whale, historically, do not tend to have kamui added to their names. That said, some important or powerful animals always have kamui in their name, and the kamui cannot be removed, such as Dapun kamui, which is orca, or Gimun kamui, which is bear. Actually, bears are so important to Ainu culture that if you just say kamui, the first image that will come to mind is a bear. Bears can just be called kamui. More on the importance of bears in a moment. Because of this deeply spiritual understanding of the world, there are many ways and opportunities to interact with kamui in daily life. For example, when foraging for wild sukina plants, a plant that is usually sweet, but sometimes a bit bitter, people might chant,
Sukina-to-pem, kina-to-pem, sukina-to-pem, kina-to-pem.
Be sweet sukina, be sweet grass. It's basically an appeal to the plant to not be bitter. It's something we might call a prayer, or maybe even a spell. There were a lot of chants like this used in all kinds of situations, such as drawing water, or even just cleaning debris out of your eyes. Now let's get back to bears. I took this diagram from a website called SapporoTourguides.com. It was in an interview, which is the same interview where that man talked about spilling a drink on the floor. It's very interesting. I really recommend it. But this interview is about Iomante, or rather a movie about Iomante I'm going to show you a little bit of in a moment. Iomante is, to put it crudely, ritual bear sacrifice, which I don't think is a nice thing to call it because there's a lot of negative connotation tied up in the words ritual and sacrifice. The fact is, this is no wasteful sacrifice. This is effectively a slaughter for meat. But at a deeper level, this is sending off the greatest of the kamui, the most passe of the passe kamui, back to kamui moshiri. And the idea is to send it back in a way that is worthy of it, so that it will go back and encourage the other kamui to come to Earth and supply more meat to the Ainu. These days, however, because many Ainu communities depend on tourism and therefore good PR, the Iomante is no longer performed with living bears, but rather bears that have already died. Understandably, there are Ainu people who feel that something has been lost because they are compromising a tradition that may be thousands of years old just for tourists. And I think that's a really valid feeling. And I think I would like to have Debo Akibe in the movie Ainu Moshiri describe it to you. I really recommend watching this movie when you can.
イオマンテのことちょっと聞いてもいいですか。子熊を育てるっていうのは、子熊の中に宿ってる神様と一緒に過ごすってことで、大きくなった熊を殺すっていうのは神の国を送るっていうニュアンス。
やっぱり自分で大切に可愛がって養った熊を送るからこそ価値があるんだっていうふうに俺は覚えてる。でその神様は自分の神の国天に帰っていって周りの神様に「いや地上人間の国すげえいいとこだ綺麗なとこだ」って言ってもらったらそれを聞いた他の神様がフクロウになったりクマになったりして地上に恵みとして降りてきてくれるのよ。それがカムイとアイヌの関係性、これの主軸なわけよ。それやんないことでね、どうもね、なんか俺アイヌだぞって思ってるし言ってんだけど肝心なとこがふっとつかめない、なんか変なんだよ。
集落的中美しかんちゃけれ